Hey guys, Chris here. Welcome back to the channel, and in this video I want to give you guys a full breakdown on what it cost me to swap in a 1JZ VVTi into my Mark3 Supra. When I was researching my swap, I had to go to so many different websites and forums just to find all the parts that I need, where to buy them, how much they cost, and it was just a big hassle. As I was researching all those parts, I started writing down the part number, the name of the part, how much it cost me when I bought it, and now I have all that in a single spreadsheet. I'm going to link that spreadsheet in the description box down below. I also have a thread on Supra forums where I detail my build from mostly start to finish. I hope to have everything there for a 1JZ VVTi into a Mark III. There's lots of different threads on non-VVTi swaps. For the most part, they're the same. You need to think about all the parts that go into swapping it into a chassis. When you really start adding it up, it may not seem like a lot. You know, some things are like $18 or $20 or $30, but how many things do you have to buy? So I'll give you guys a full breakdown of that. I also want to mention through this list, what I'm going to go over first is all the stuff that's required. After that, I'll go over all the extra stuff that I purchased that may not necessarily be required to complete the swap. So the first thing I want to talk about is the engine. I purchased my engine from JDM California, March 4th of 2020. At the time, the one that I wanted, 1JZ VVTi out of a JZX100, non-immobilized, it was $2,600. Today, at the same place, they're about $4,500. Yeah, it's gone up a lot since the pandemic started, so I was actually lucky that I picked mine up before those prices were really affected, but even then they had already started going up. Just 6 to 8 months prior, they were only about like $1,800. That's the biggest cost, so you guys need to keep that in mind. I don't think that prices for these engines are going to go down anytime soon. If you're on a budget like I was when I was doing this whole swap, it took me 2 years. You'll want to secure your engine as soon as you can. They also had to ship it to me in Texas. Shipping cost $400 and I had to pay a PayPal fee of like $90. My car was a 1988 non-turbo manual transmission, which means I had the W58 transmission in there, and I wanted to go ahead and get an R154 for the swap. So I picked mine up locally. Don't remember if it was $900 or $1,200 because I looked at so many listings. So I'll just go on the high end and say it was $1,200. And I purchased that actually before my engine. I purchased that in July of 2019. Today, just looking at the marketplace, you're looking anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500. I plan to keep my 1JZ mostly stock for a while, and knowing what I know now, I probably would have stayed with the W58 for a while longer. I would have saved on the cost of the transmission. I just would have had to get a different bell housing. The R154 I picked up didn't have an ABS sensor, so it was just blank. So I tried to reuse my W58. ABS sensor doesn't 100% fit, so I kind of have it in there with some washers, and I'm not sure if it's leaking slightly right now. So if you're planning to stay stock for a while, I would probably hang on to the W58 for a little bit longer. Since most of these 1JZ VVTi swaps come out of four-door cars like the Toyota Chaser or the Toyota Mark II, they're going to have front sumps, so you're going to need to pick up a rear sump setup. When I bought mine, it was $500. Today, you can get them on eBay or somewhere like that for $600–700. DriftMotion sells them as well for I think $800 or something. When you buy the engine, they typically don't come with the intercooler, and it's pretty much cut off at the pipes that go to the engine. So you'll need an intercooler kit or build your own intercooler. I don't know how to weld, at least not yet. I just wanted something pretty much plug and play. So I picked up a CXRacing intercooler kit. They actually sell one made for a 1JZ VVTi into a Mark III Supra. Fitment's okay, it's not like 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. And that cost me about $599.36. If you know how to fabricate, that'll make it a whole lot easier. Or if you just have tons of intercooler piping laying around and you just want to put it all together with a bunch of couplers, you could probably do that as well. I wanted to refresh my engine when I got it. At first, I actually bought some gaskets individually before I realized I should have just gotten the full gasket kit for a 1JZ. So I ended up buying the 2 cam seals, the front crank seal, and the rear main seal. And I got them on eBay. And they are OEM parts, so I ended up getting the front seals in one listing for $38. And I ended up getting the rear main seal in a separate listing for $32. But if you want to save money, instead of buying all the gaskets separately, because there's a whole bunch more gaskets than that, go ahead and get the full gasket kit. They sell that on eBay as well, and the kit cost me about $400. So that has all the gaskets, including like head gaskets and a whole bunch of other stuff that I didn't even use. but I'm gonna save and just, you know, keep it for future. Now the next thing is the downpipe. The way the engine comes, they have the elbow on the turbo, and then the pipe that comes off the elbow, it's just cut off. So you need to buy something or weld from there. So I ended up buying a Future Fab downpipe, which replaces the elbow and then comes down about, let's say, a foot. And that Future Fab downpipe was $299. The problem was I didn't end up using that because I wanted something that would be more plug and play again, so I ended up buying the CXRacing downpipe, and that is $361.48. I bought that just a few months ago. The CXRacing downpipe wasn't perfect fitment, and I'm not sure if it has to do with the fact that my car is a California car and it may have a different cat, but it was pushing everything out to the side a little bit, so I still ended up having to go to an exhaust shop. The fact that I ended up having to go to an exhaust shop anyway, I wouldn't have gotten the CXRacing downpipe if I knew it was going to give me fitment issues. I would have just rolled with the Future Fab one. So the next thing is the water pump. Just like with the gaskets, I wanted to just refresh everything, so I ended up buying a new water pump from eBay, and that was $200. I bought this water pump after I bought a thermostat, but the guy included a thermostat with it. So prior to buying the water pump, I bought the thermostat off eBay. It was $30. It came with thermostat and thermostat gasket. So for those of you guys who are doing AC, you're probably going to need a couple more things in order to make that work with your Mark III piping. For me, I was not doing AC, so I needed an AC delete bracket because the bracket actually supports, I think, the power steering pump. And I got that from Freed Engineering. They sell it for $75, and then they can throw in the right size belt for $25. So total of $100 from Freed Engineering. So one issue that I ran into when I was doing my swap is the rear sump setup that I bought actually came from a non-turbo car, a SC300 or something. It has a space for the oil drain, but it wasn't fully bored out or drilled out. So I had to drill out the bore, and I had to drill out 2 holes for the bolts. Even though it was drilled out, the location of that is different than on a front sump. The angle of the original drain line doesn't reach there without kinking the hose. Unless you find like the perfect shape hose, it's got to be like a really sharp S-curve or something. So I ended up getting this kit from eBay from this seller named Mambatech. So it comes with the oil feed in return and the coolant feed in return. The lower part that goes into the pan, it actually points in the right direction, and it comes with a hose. So basically it's a perfect straight shot and there's no kinks or anything like that. So that was about $98.90. Bought that in October 24th, 2021. So my engine didn't come with the airflow meter. I'm not sure why, because that's part of the engine. So I bought one on eBay for $79.99. You do need to buy engine brackets that will bolt onto the stock Mark III engine mounts. DriftMotion sells it, CXRacing sells it. I ended up getting mine from eBay, and it was $52.95. I bought that January 25th, 2021. So that's a pretty good price. The other ones that I've seen, they're more than $150. I guess time will tell if it'll hold up. I feel like this is becoming like the eBay build. I have like all these parts just from eBay, but what people don't realize is that eBay isn't just used stuff, it's also new stuff as well. And like these engine brackets, or people who buy parts from like Japan or another country and resell them to people in the US who have JDM cars. The timing belt was $50. I got that from eBay on November 21st, 2020. And I also got the timing belt tensioner OEM from eBay for $49.91. So the timing belt tensioner pulley, which is separate from the tensioner itself, I purchased from DriftMotion for $39.99. And the next thing is the power steering cooler. On the Mark IIIs, it's just a pipe that comes out and goes into the front bumper area. Because the power steering pump is being moved from the passenger side to the driver side, you need to kind of reconfigure the power steering cooler, or at least have extra lines coming from the passenger side going over to the driver side. I opted to just rip that out altogether and buying a like universal power steering cooler. So this one's made by Durail or Durali, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's a generic power steering cooler, and it was $40.54. For my intake, I didn't need to buy an intake pipe. A 3-inch pipe works perfectly fine, and I had one from my 7M, so I just reused that. and I bought a cone air filter from AutoZone. It was $39.99. I did purchase a few couplers. The first one was a 3-inch to 3.25-inch coupler because my pipe was 3 inches and the AFM is 3.25. I got that from Amazon for $17.99, and I needed an elbow to come off the J-pipe. I could have maybe searched for a stock pipe because it curves the right way, but I ended up just finding a 45-degree elbow. It's 2.75 inch from the J-pipe to 3 inch for my intake pipe, and that was $15.03. So I also purchased stock spark plugs, which for the 1JZ stock is NGK. It's the BKR6 EGP. By the way, I'll link all the parts that I purchased down in the description below as well, just so you can easily find it. All right, next up, drivetrain parts. I purchased my flywheel and clutch from DriftMotion as well as my bell housing. So the flywheel was a lightweight flywheel. That was $359. Also purchased at the same time the clutch, which is a DriftMotion Stage 2 clutch, and that was $439. Stage 2 is good for up to 400 wheel horsepower. Pretty good clutch for my goals as far as keeping it mostly stock for a while. And then the bell housing, since you're going to be putting on the R154 onto a 1JZ, that was $399 from DriftMotion. And then if you're changing from a W58 to a R154, another extra cost is the drive shaft. So I ended up buying a aftermarket drive shaft aluminum from Shaftmasters. It was $407.99. And then because the W58 and R154 use different slave cylinders, I had to buy the slave cylinder. That was an Ison part, CRT024. It was $33.99 from Amazon. For the transmission fluid, I used Motul Gear 300 75W90. I bought a 3-pack for $60 from Amazon. You have kind of two options to go with the wiring. You can go have one made, and I believe they run anywhere from like $1,100 to $1,500, or you can try to do it yourself, which means merging the 7M GE wiring harness with the JZX100 1JZ wiring harness. It's not as difficult as it sounds, but it's tedious, and you kind of have to have some patience for learning about wiring. So that's really up to you. I'll go over the price that I paid for some of the stuff that I had to purchase to do my own wiring. By the way, I also have a separate wiring video and a wiring thread on Super Forums. I'll link those down below as well. So I bought a bunch of wires from AutoZone, just off-the-shelf wiring. You could probably get better stuff, but I just bought wiring just one loom at a time. That's between like 14, 16, and 18 gauge wiring. I did buy a 4-gauge cable, 25 feet of it. It's called Rock Rick's 4-gauge 25 feet power ground soft touch cable, and that's because the alternator is on the passenger side instead of the driver side where the 7M would be. So that was $20.99 from Amazon. So if you're using the stock gauges, you probably want your Tach to work properly. Because the 7M GE has a distributor and the 1JZ GTE does not have a distributor, you need to change out some of the resistors in your cluster. I bought one kit that had 3 of the values that I need, the 100K, 15K, and the 560 ohm resistors, and that's called the Chanzon resistor kit. It was $9.99, and then I bought a kit that just had 39K resistors. That was $6.48. Those are the resistors that you need. You just need to find the kits that have at least one of those values. Now, as you're splicing your wires together, you might want to use one of 2 methods. So the way I did it was soldering and heat shrinking. At first, I just bought a heat shrink kit from AutoZone. I think it was like $10 or $15. It had like all these different sizes, but for the individual wires, you only end up using one size. So you end up just burning through that one size and have all these extra sizes left over. So I would not recommend getting heat shrink from AutoZone. I ended up getting a loom of 1/8 heat shrink from Amazon, and it was $9.99. And then to go along with the 4-gauge cable for the alternator, I ended up buying 4-gauge cable ends. It was $9.69. I do want to mention a bunch of parts here that I almost forgot to mention in the required list, mostly because most of them I purchased at the dealer, and I kind of just lost track of that as I was searching for all the parts that I ended up purchasing for this swap. First part is actually one that I bought through Rock Auto, which is the Camry throttle cable, and that was a Pioneer brand. It was $35.79. I also bought a VVTi rebuild kit, which basically just includes some OEM parts put together, and that one's from Night Run Garage, and I paid $28.99 for that. Alright, the next bunch of parts I purchased from the dealership. I don't necessarily want to say how much I paid because I did receive a pretty good discount on it. What I'll do is I'll list the current retail price, which is basically if you search these part numbers online today, this is what the retail price will show. Oil filter. And there's two different oil filters you can get, D1 and D3. They both fit, but one's a lot longer, and with the space on the side of the Mark III engine bay, you might want to get the short one. Also had a drain plug and drain plug gasket. FIPG, which is form in place gasket, so if you're sealing up like the valve covers or the oil pan, you'll need some of this. My R154 didn't come with these couple parts, but the two bolts that hold the fork bracket as well as the fork release spring. Also, I refreshed my transmission since I got it used. I drained all the fluid out. The drain plug gasket, as well as the fill plug and the fill plug gasket. Now these drain plugs are different than the stock ones. They're both OEM, but this one actually is a hex instead of a regular bolt head. The reason I did that was because the bolt head was just so thin, and the ones that came in my transmission were already stripped out, so I was like, I don't want that to happen again. Not that I'm going to over tighten it or anything, but I feel like this would be easier to use. And because you'll be flushing out the cooling system, you'll need red Toyota coolant, and I don't know if it was like $20 or $30 a bottle, but it's 100% strength, so you'll need to mix that with some distilled water. So let's just say it's about $60 worth of Toyota red coolant. And then if you're going to be using the R154 with the stock 4.3 diff, you'll probably need to get a different Speedo Gear. I'm not sure if this one's going to work yet or not, but it's the closest one that I can match up to an R154 with the 4.3, which they were never meant to go together. But preferably, you might want to switch your diff to a taller gear if you're going to be using the R154. And then I purchased some brake fluid from AutoZone for the clutch, because even though you don't necessarily need to drain a lot of it, you'll want to bleed it, so you'll need just an extra bottle or two. It was about $8 or so. So next up are kind of optional parts. These aren't required necessarily to get the car moving, but they'll just make the quality of the build just a little bit better. So the first thing I'll talk about is the wiring. So I wanted to kind of re-loom it together, so you'll notice that everything's kind of bundled together in this nice, neat loom and tape and everything. Once you're done with it, everything's going to be kind of everywhere, so I bought a bunch of larger heat shrink. So I ended up getting 4 different sizes, and I may still need to get 2 more sizes. Still not 100% done on this part. But the sizes I did buy are 1 inch, about 5 feet of that. That was $40.04. I got 3/16. I got 15 feet of that, and that was $32.99. I got 1/4. I got 10 feet of that for $26.99, and I got 1/2, 5 feet of that for $23.99. I think the sizes I still need either 1.5, 3/4, and possibly 3/8. So actually three more sizes possibly. It's not required, but it'll kind of keep everything together and like heat protected. Now over that, I was planning to use this, what they call wire protective sheathing. It's not really protective of heat or anything. It's more for, I think, looks. But I purchased a 1 inch size of that, 10-foot roll, and that was $12.99. And then I purchased 1/4 and 1/2 in a bundle. It was like 1/4, 25 feet, 1/2, 25 feet, and it was $9.99 for that. I also bought a boost gauge. I bought a Pro Sport 52mm boost gauge, and that was $94.72. Got it from Amazon. I also ended up buying a gauge pod from AutoExtrude. I actually like this company a lot because they make 3D printed parts for the Mark III Supra. And that gauge pod goes behind the steering wheel, and it's $89.99. I also just recently bought a boost controller. I haven't fully set it up yet or installed it. That was a Greddy Profec boost controller. There's a lot of different places that sell this, but the cheapest place that I found, even with the shipping, was from RHD Japan, and it was $232.47. And that's just for the part, with like whatever fees and then shipping. It came out to like $29 for all that. So pretty good price. Other places are selling it for like close to $300 or over $300. So And then the next parts I actually have listed as optional, but I think they might actually be required because the stock clutch fan doesn't fit with the CXRacing intercooler kit. Unless you reroute that, then you'll need to get an electric fan. So I ended up purchasing a Flexolite electric fan. It's a 16-inch model 238. It's supposed to be 3000 CFM, and that was $150.46. I bought that actually off Amazon. And then I bought the Flexolite fan controller kit. That's 160 to 220 degree adjustment, and that was $58.39. I bought that fan because it fits in the stock Mark III shroud. Even though it says it's 3000 CFM, I'm not sure it's going to be enough without running the smaller fan. So I have the stock AC fan installed with the stock relay for it wired up to a switch. You could probably instead get a dual 12-inch kit. And then just recently as well, I bought 2 heat wrap products, which I need to use because it's starting to get pretty hot under the hood. So I have exhaust wrap. It's called ARTR 2-inch by 50 feet titanium exhaust header wrap. And it comes with 11.8-inch stainless locking ties. That was $17.99 from Amazon. And gold heat wrap, which I'm going to use on the intake, I got it from Amazon as well. It's called Design Engineering 2-inch by 15 feet, and it was $37.10. Alright, next up I did want to talk about some of the tools that I had to purchase in order to do this swap. I had to purchase an engine hoist, an engine stand. I would recommend getting a multimeter, a soldering iron, and a bunch of solder. I would also recommend getting one of these little stands to hold wires while you're soldering. Wire cutters or wire strippers, electrical tape. I'd probably get an extra set of jack stands. So if you already have 2 jack stands, I would get 2 more. Or if you don't have any, get all 4, because you want the car to be level when it's lifted up, just so, you know, when you're filling fluids or doing something like that, everything's just straight. Also, you might need a few special sockets. Like I think I had to buy a special socket for the crank bolt. You might need special sockets for various things. I don't know, like they're just budget for $100 or $200 on like just regular hand tools you might need to buy that you may not have. I would also maybe just budget for a good light in your garage if you don't have one, because that helps tremendously. You might be working a little bit later into the night. A coolant funnel for like bleeding out the coolant. You'll definitely need a 1/2-inch torque wrench. Pretty common torque wrench to have. People use for like wheels and most torque values. But for some of the lower torque value bolts, I did need to pick up a 1/4-inch drive torque wrench. I just bought a pretty expensive one. I think it was actually off of either Amazon or it might have been Harbor Freight, I'm not sure. You will need to at least borrow super high value torque wrench for the crank pulley. If I remember, it was like 240 foot-pounds, I want to say, somewhere around there, but you can actually rent this from O'Reilly. Speaking of the crank pulley, you'll probably need to rent a puller, and I got mine from AutoZone. And also a transmission jack would be helpful. I actually ended up buying one for when I did the clutch on my FRS, so I already had it, but it'll help. Alright, so you can see the total for all the required stuff to swap in your car, a 1JZ VVTi, is about $8,903.16. And that actually doesn't include the shipping for the engine, as well as for maybe half the parts like the Tach. But let's say $400 for the engine shipping plus $500 to $800. You're looking at pretty much $10K for all the required parts. Wow, that is a lot of money. When you think about it all at once, it's like... Now the total with everything I spent, all the required parts as well as some of the not necessarily required parts, you're looking at $9,759.75. Once again, still kind of an estimate. Basically, with throwing shipping and taxes on some of those parts, about $11,000. Wow, that is a lot. And oh my gosh, I hope I didn't turn you guys off on doing this swap. I know it's a lot. Some of you guys may be on a budget. I definitely was on a budget. That's why it took me so long to do it. All the prices I gave you, they can change at any time. But the biggest thing is the engine. The engine is up by $2,000 right now. I don't expect that to go down, or if it does, not by much. That's pretty much all I can think of. If there's any other parts that I might have missed, I'll try to added to the list that I'm gonna attach in the description below. Make sure you check that out. If there's anything that you think that I missed, go ahead and put it in the comment section. Let me know, would you guys still do this swap? Would you do a different swap? If you guys like this video or got something out of it, go ahead and please give me a thumbs up. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.